and one of the co-hosts of the Basement Radio Arcade podcast on the BRAP podcast channel on YouTube as well. Here tonight with a special episode of what I think will be the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast with a special guest. On tonight, I have with me DaTruth777 from Twitter, who I will be referring to throughout the night as Truth. So if you are not aware, if you've maybe been living under a rock, if you're part of the Twitterdom, there was a conversation that went on probably about Friday, and we're recording here on Saturday, the 22nd of April. So yesterday, the 21st of April, there was a soundbite that was captured from Jeff Grubb's Game Mess podcast, where he mentioned that he had heard that HiFi Rush had not sold as well as people were hoping, as Xbox executives were hoping, and that there was a mention that that management was also not happy with the overall performance of Xbox, and that set off a round of several comments where people repeated that on Twitter, and after a while, I think as you guys who have been watching the channel know by now, I tend not to wade into controversy like that right off the bat. I typically wait, but after I saw a trend of what I was concerned was a certain amount of misinterpretation of that, I did write up one of my longer threads on Twitter addressing the issue. DaTruth responded with maybe some other perspectives, and we wanted to get together tonight to talk about that. So, Truth, you want to introduce yourself real quick and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. This is the Truth, 777, and I'm pretty much around. I think I'm around you guys' ages. You guys are in your 40s, right? I'm in my 40s. I've been gaming since the Nintendo. Well, a little bit before the Nintendo. More so the Atari. And I just wanted to have a short conversation on the tweet he said in general, and now we're here.
Very cool, very cool, very cool. And one of the things that Truth and I definitely agree on is Twitter is an environment that only allows Twitter doesn't really give conversations and discussions room to breathe, and as is the case with any text-based media. There's always the chance for misinterpretation. There's always a chance for somebody to feel that a person is coming across angry, or for somebody to feel that something's an attack or whatever. So it is always, these questions are so complex and so convoluted that it's always better to get together and talk them out. And oftentimes you will walk away from it finding that, both, mutual, all sorts of gamers can be reasonable people. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to start off at least just kind of walking through the tweet. And I'll try and go kind of jab by jab. And Truth, you can let me know if you had a difference of opinion with a certain section that I said. And at any point, if you want to just go ahead and go off and address other sections as well, please feel free. Does that work? Okay, so here's how the tweet started off, and this is my post. If HiFi Rush didn't sell well, in quotes, that's an indictment of HiFi Rush, not the entirety of Xbox and its business model. It's a rhythm-based combat game, a subgenre that historically doesn't sell well and was never likely to clear the 15% margin that is desired. Now, that is a reference to a rubric around the industry that, in general, most companies, for their successful games, and of course, as you've heard me mention on several podcasts, there are only a very small percentage of games that even clear the books, right, of the initial money that was invested. So there's a very small percentage that are successful, and of those ones that are successful, the industry generally would like them to return, at least 15% margin. And then I went on to say, whether or not Game Pass is a sustainable business model, again, sustainable in quotes, is a decision that only Microsoft can make. So let me hold up there, Truth. And was there anything that I mentioned through that section that you disagreed with?
Okay, so no, not on the especially with the Game Pass is only something that Microsoft thinks is sustainable or not. Wow, I absolutely do agree with that. there are some cases to be made against that for sure. And as far as HiFi Rush being indicative for Xbox as a whole, I also agree. But again, there's some arguments that could be made. Now, if you would like me to elaborate, I can, or if you want to finish, then you can. And I remember very well, so I can, come back to it with no problem if that's necessary.
Okay, well, let me go. Let me go under or do one other. It's a very long thread.
Yeah, I know, but I remember. As you're saying, I don't remember word for word, but I can break it down in my head on what I wanted to address. So that's not a problem. I can remember all of it, most of it.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and read back the second passage, then I'll let you go and go. So I went on to say, we keep trying to compare their model to other standard models in the industry and corporations that operate at different ends of the spectrum in scale, and that is where we get skewed conclusions. When PSVR 2 sales were reported as down, we said that was uncorroborated data. Wait for Sony financials, and the report was ignorant of scale and long-range projections. Now, that was a report that was made by Bloomberg, who, as most people know, I don't find is a particularly reliable publication when it comes to, I mean, they are an unreliable publication when it comes to gaming news. I went on to say, I trust Jeff Grubb with my life, but I don't know what, in quotes, didn't make the money it needed to, end quote, means in a subscription model where there are costs not borne directly by the gaming division and where it's unclear how revenue recognition is calculated based on game consumption in the subscription service. So let me hold up there, Truth, and let me let you go ahead and posit your arguments.
Yeah, because this is where I think that's like the last one, and then I came in off of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no, you want me to go ahead? You want me to go ahead and go through the whole thread? I think I've got like 3 more sections that I posted.
Yeah, go through the whole thing if you don't mind.
Okay. And then I said, okay, I went on to say, and for a first-party game that was never going to do big numbers regardless, we need to stop grasping at every straw and soundbite and Netflix comparison to indict Game Pass. Let it play out. Base conclusions on news and not rumors. We don't need to visit the viability or non-viability of Game Pass every week, which is a thing that hadn't happened on Twitter, which I find particularly frustrating. The other side to that is Xbox fans shouldn't be acting like HiFi Rush. So there's a break in the paragraph, and so those are all the things that I kind of mentioned about the people that were trying to use this soundbite as a dunk on Xbox. My feedback to the Xbox fans, because I mean the other side of this is there are lots of Xbox fans who quite frankly have run around and said, HiFi Rush is the greatest thing ever. HiFi Rush, Ghostwire Tokyo, like the year started off with a bang, blah blah blah. The part of my tweet that addresses that is, I say the other side to that is Xbox fans shouldn't be acting like HiFi Rush and Ghostwire Tokyo were the big AAA releases for Q1 that make amends for Redfall, Forza, and Starfield. The, in quotes, greatest year in Xbox gaming, end quotes, is still broke and thirsty AF, and the division needs to continue stepping it up to correct course for this generation. So I think after that, Truth is where you came in, and I will let you go ahead and proceed from there.
Okay, so the long story short, as best as I possibly can, just so everybody knows I'm a little long-winded, but I'm going to do my best to stay on course and be concise. You're right. Like, you didn't say anything that was wrong in the sense of what you're speaking on, right? But I came in and told you that was a reach. What you were saying is that, HiFi Rush is not indicative of Xbox, or we don't know if if Game Pass is sustainable. That's only Microsoft. Because for me, just as much as you can say we don't know if that's indicative to Microsoft, HiFi Rush is indicative to actually Xbox, and or if Game Pass is sustainable and only Microsoft can know that, well, then you don't know if what there's people are saying is true or not either. You know what I'm saying? That Uno reverse card can be thrown so easily where it's like, hey, what you're saying, facts, but then it also is applicable to you. What these people could be saying could be, fraudulent or out the side of their neck or irrelevant, but it also could be true. Neither side would never know because, neither side is working for Microsoft as far as we know, right? It could be some people on Twitter, but we wouldn't know, right? At least we shouldn't know. And so it was like everything you're saying has legitimacy, right? But everything you're saying also literally is counterproductive because it can also be legitimate for the other side, because neither one of us actually knows what's going on factually, because Microsoft is not giving numbers, and I do want to make a statement on that. Businesses give numbers if there's something, good to give. This isn't indicative of Microsoft. Sony did not give numbers in the PlayStation 3 era. They were talking about how many minutes people played Uncharted, and nobody cared about or was irrelevant to anything, because at that time, that's the things that they could benchmark, because they were getting their tails whooped. And it's the same thing now. Sometimes companies may not want to give numbers, sometimes they do, but usually when you hit something that they feel is viable to them, like let's say Game Pass had within this year and a half hit like 40 million subscribers. I highly doubt they wouldn't come out and say that would be a record for them. You know what I mean? They'd come out and say, hey, we've reached 40 million subscribers. So that was my issue, was just like, hey, you're not wrong in what you're saying, but because it's Twitter, and because, I come to find out that maybe I don't communicate as well in the text format, especially on Twitter, and people can tend to take things I say askew. I was just like, man, I'm not. You will see, I only tweeted you twice, and I was just like, I'm just really not going to do this on Twitter, because I feel like you do have conversations to where you're trying to actually have a conversation and or a debate, but even there, you're listening to hear rather than listening to respond. So that was my biggest issue, was like, well, if you're going to use that, then really you have no leg to stand on, because you don't know either. Now I get it, like you said, you've been in the corporate offices and all those things. I've heard this. I don't listen to Brap much, but the few times I have, I think you've brought that up because you debate with the chat, and the people that are going to be unreasonable because they want to win the argument rather than actually have a conversation. And that's fine. I know a fair amount about business as well. I'm retired, so what I gather is that you've already brought this up, but when you're on Twitter, it's really, most of it, you might can have a decent conversation here or there, but most of it's going to turn into console wars, no matter how you try to frame it, right? You either have fun with it or you just leave it alone. Because if you try to have an actual conversation, with the people that follow you, and then, what Heartache, would call the crumb side, they're going to still be there. And they're going to interrupt any kind of decent dialogue you're going to have. And it's a never-ending cycle. So my main point was, it's a reach even on your part, as it would be a reach on their part when you were stating, hey, to me, I was, in my mind, I was saying, you were saying, hey, guys, this is a reach. To say HiFi Rush is indicative of my Xbox. I was like, yeah, that's true. But my thing, just a side note, and then I'm done, is that Xbox as a whole, when you're looking at the whole picture, should be a cause for concern. Not a cause for the end of the world, but you should have your antennas up with everything Xbox. And this is from a guy that hasn't played Xbox since really the end of the 360, right? But if you're just looking at everything as a whole, because it seems like people keep trying to segment this stuff, but like since like 2018, the first party has been sparse and kind of stagnant, right? And then they were using, hey, we're buying these studios as a way to get their fans excited. Then the Xbox Series comes out and they show all these games that eventually will come out for sure, and I'm pretty sure some of them will be outstanding. But you do that because you're trying to hold your fans, and when you're just looking at it as a whole, I can see how the PlayStation fans, especially when they're trolling a console war, and can get this idea. But even the ones that's not trolling can say like, okay, HiFi Rush may not be indicative, but Halo coming out, the story mode, because you had Dark on Brap, and he was like trying to defend in a way of like, well, it was just this one game that's 30 frames, or what else? And even on his channel, he said some things like that. And I'm like, well, Halo, the story mode came out incomplete. It didn't have split screen. It didn't have a few things, right? And the multiplayer, while the game might have been fun, and I think that they did the right thing by going back to the basics for the Halo fans. One, it didn't really garner the attention that I'm pretty sure they were looking for, and it still had its issues as well. Forza is like the crown on Xbox's head. And I really feel like as much as people like to throw Forza to the side, that's their like triumph song for right now. And that's just it. It's just like, if you're looking at the whole picture, regardless if we know the facts or not, it doesn't look great for Xbox. I will just hold on to saying that I said this to you off thing, is that I really think Xbox had a plan for like a 10, 15 year strategy that they were going to hold to no matter what. So you guys are fine. You know what I mean? Like, there is no end of the world scenario because they're willing to fight, knowing that they may take some L's along the way for quite some time. You see what I'm saying? So that's my point.
Okay, so I think I'd like to walk through those and kind of do some back and forth and maybe both of us come to a extended understanding of kind of each other's perspective and where we're coming from. And I'm actually, as you went through that all, I was going to start at the beginning, but I'm actually going to start at the end, because your kind of last segment there talked about how you felt Xbox is a cause for concern. And so one thing that should be clear for anyone listening to this podcast or anybody who hears me on another section, because one of the things I posted today is not you, but other people will come by a single thread that I post, and I mentioned this in a longer thread too. And the immediate thing is to rather than discuss the issues at hand, is to visit the intentions of a person's character. And somebody will say, "Oh, well, you're an Xbox fanboy," or when I speak up in defense of. Not in defense, but when I explain what's going on at Sony or PlayStation or what the business perspective is, then people will say, "Oh, you're a pony." So one of the things I want to expand on is I don't disagree with you that Xbox is a cause for concern. And in fact, one of the things that I went through in that episode when Dark was on is I said, look, in 2017, when Game Pass was announced, I was like, okay, good move. I see the shifting in the strategy. That makes sense. In 2018, when the initial acquisitions were mentioned, I was like, great, that's awesome, shift in strategy. In 2019, when Phil came on stage and he said, everything's going date and date on both PC and console, and we're going to do PC Game Pass, and all the things that were announced throughout the, cross-buy, et cetera, cross-progression. I was like, all those things are great, but my problem now is, and Bramp and I have done more than one rant where I've gone through this, ad nauseum. I was like, but now it's 2023. I'm like, the acquisition started 5 years ago. My expectations for that company are much higher now. Everborn and I were going back and forth in DM this morning. And, he posted today, the slate, right, for the year and kind of like the things that are coming through it. I'm like, that's a dry slate as far as I'm concerned. They have 23 studios now, and the output from those studios is not commensurate with what my expectations are. And I was explaining to him, my expectations is that there's 2 to 4 A-tier or S-tier releases per year. First party, third party, whatever. And that those things are in the subscription service and they're not hitting that metric. And then I said, and then when it's any of that you back off from that 4 number, then you need to have redundancies and backup and at least really strong double A's in core genres, right? Which my point of the HiFi Rush thing is, HiFi Rush is not a core genre. You look at sales numbers for rhythm-based combat games, and they're not high. And quite frankly, I can only remember one of note in recent history, and I think last year it was Metal Singer. And I'm like, those just aren't big number games. So my comment about, people saying, my comment about HiFi Rush was about the people who were saying, look, HiFi Rush didn't sell well. That's proof that you need to sell your games and not put them in a subscription service. And I was like, okay, that's you taking a fishing line, right, in shallow water and running that 100 miles out to sea with a very wild hyperbolic extrapolation. That I don't think that's what it means. But I completely agree with you that Xbox, as far as I'm concerned, is underperforming. They are a software company. They are one of the top 5 most highly valuated corporations on the planet. My expectations are for them to deliver world-class performance, and they're not doing that. I've also specifically mentioned, the big fumble that's going on right now is messaging, which is something that I called Sony out for at the transition from last generation to this generation. I think Sean Layden started it with the mumblefish, like babble speak about cross play, and that continued as he handed over the reins to Jim Ryan. And then there were several missteps, right, with Jim Ryan's messaging. Up until maybe about, the last year or so, it's kind of settled out and become what I feel like is more mature from a business perspective. My problem with Xbox in messaging right now is, and I posted a Twitter thread about this as well, they came on stage in June and said, everything that we're showing you now, you're going to be playing in 12 months. Then they came back in January and they put Forza up on the screen and they put basically TBD 2023. And I'm like, you can't do that. You can't come to me and talk to me and act like you didn't say 12 months ago or like I forgot. Like, that's insulting. I feel like that insults my intelligence as a consumer. And then they gave a bunch of, double speak about what was going on with Starfield. And then 6 weeks after the showcase, they announced that Starfield is delayed. And now we have Redfall at 30 frames per second, which is just unacceptable for a shooter. I'm a PC gamer as well. I play shooters at 165 frames per second at 3440 by 1440p, right? Like a 30 frames per second shooter is like, I'm just not doing that. But I also feel that that's been a mishandling of Xbox marketing talk the entire time. I never felt that game should have been pushed in the front as the big flagship title for this year. I felt that was disservice to Arcane Studios, who is not doing something in their wheelhouse. So I totally agree with you that Xbox is cause for concern, and that they're underperforming this generation. Where I take a stand is when people take these very singular small data points and say, see, that's indicative of that is proof that the thing is going wrong. Or another Twitter favorite, which kind of drives me nuts, is Netflix. Right? Everybody says, well, Game Pass is the Netflix of gaming. So Netflix comes out with their quarterly earnings report, has bad information, and lots of people go, see, that's what's going to happen to Game Pass. And I'm like, that's not equitable. Like, you can't draw that correlation. First of all, they're two pretty significantly different business models. But then, just to do that, this thing is happening bad to this thing over here, so therefore it's going to happen bad to that thing over there, I think is a big leap.
Shit. I'm just saying, I got you. I'm still with you. You can continue.
Okay, cool. So let's go back to the beginning. One of my things with, what you're saying is we had this, it wasn't a conversation, it was strangely enough, weirdly battling YouTube videos. But, somebody said the other thing of, you guys are saying, you can't, and it was somebody making the comment lazy devs, which is another thing that bothers me, particularly people who have never written a line of code. But, we said, well, you can't apply the label lazy devs, right? Because you don't know. And here's how development works. And therefore you can't levy that accusation. So this person came back and said, well, you guys can't defend it because you guys don't know either. I said, oh, okay. But my point on Jeff Grubb's statement is and part of this is like, I think everyone, I would hope, squelches down on some manner of a framework or how you logically reason or what your rules of engagement are. And one of my things, and I guess this is one of my things, is being a person who talks about games in I hate to use the term, in the content creation space is I mean, for 20 years since I started doing this in 2000, I just have a rule set that I have to operate by. And one of those, in those rules are sometimes very lofty and more extreme than other people, and I understand that, other content creators in the space. But one of my rules is news is not news until it comes out from a reputable source. And even when it comes out from a reputable source, it's not news until it's corroborated. Brap gives me flack all the time because, I'll take, for instance, last year, right? That morning that, some websites started running with Amazon is getting ready to buy EA. And Brap posted that, and I was like, Brap, don't post that. Look, something like that, you don't post and you don't repeat until you see the Wall Street Journal report it. Like when the Wall Street Journal reports it, then it's a real thing, because they're not gonna post something until they've got it confirmed through multiple sources. So I trust what Jeff Grubb said, but what I opened with was I don't know the entire context of what Jeff Grubb's soundbite was, and all the padding that would need to go around that for that type of statement. Nor do I know that it means anything. And so HiFi Rush not selling well, that could be true. But one of the things I lean on as factual historical data is that Amazon was in existence for 8 years before they reported a profitable quarter. Netflix was in existence for 6 years before it reported a profitable quarter. There are business models that exist where rather than the objective, the upfront objective or the limited time objective being make as much money as you possibly can, particularly against a incumbent that is very difficult to dislodge and is very entrenched, is to go after market share. And the way you go after market share is you go after market share by driving prices down. And so one of the things I've always been convinced of is Game Pass is a loss leader strategy.
You're buying. I'm sorry, you was buying that. You said you were saying that you drive down the market price and then you just start buying.
Sorry. And so one of the things I believe is that, not I believe, but a loss leader market strategy is where you have an entrenched incumbent that's very difficult to dislodge, very difficult to compete against. And so what you do is you come in with products that are offered at a lesser price. So you compete against the opponent on quality or on features or some other parameter. And so what you do, I got you. Yep. So you drive price down. And so one of the things that I lean on as correlation of that is, C-level executives are legally bound to only make public statements that are true from a financial perspective. A C-level officer, it's illegal for that person to say something that is untrue of the financial statements that have to be submitted to the SEC. And so Phil Spencer is now a C-level executive as CEO of Xbox. And so when he mentioned in an interview early last year, or maybe even late 2021, what he specifically said was Game Pass is sustainable. He didn't say Game Pass is profitable, and he it would have been illegal for.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He did, but go ahead.
So that
did actually say it's profitable.
So that was in a later interview, right? So, so I'm going back earlier. His first statement in an interview was that it was sustainable. And so lots of people have weaponized the Sean Layden comment, right, that Game Pass is not sustainable. And I was like, I think what we need to understand is Sean Layden made that comment for a company at Sony scale, which would absolutely be accurate. But I agree. But for a company at Microsoft scale, a $2 trillion company.
Can I interject for 1 second? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
All right. So before you even get into that, I already have that understanding, right? So when people say Netflix, I always say Netflix would be more akin to what Sony would be as far as financially, where Netflix has borrowed billions and billions and billions of dollars to sustain their company. Yeah, they may have been profitable, but they've never actually been profitable, if that makes sense. Like, they've made profits, right? But they've borrowed so much money that, can you really say they made profits? You can look at there's an article in the New York Times. I think it was like the same time Phil Spencer did the interview where he told Game Pass was at 25 million, like that same time frame, December 2021, where they were saying they were going to, the 22 and 2 would be the first year they would be actually sustainable on their own, where they would never have to borrow money from the banks. At that point in time, they had like 208 million subscribers. But to me, that would be where Sony would be, because Sony doesn't have a parent company. I mean, PlayStation doesn't have the parent company that can sustain the losses that comes from streaming, which comes in all streaming. Now, while you were saying, hey, you can't compare those things, I work in the film industry. I'm not prominent yet. I usually do production assistance. Right now, I do part-time at overnight at a hotel, just as something to get out the house, right? I usually just do it on the weekends. And this hotel has a lot of the, like Sony we had Sony here where they was doing The Walking Dead too, and, or The Walking Dead, finishing it up. And I use this as a platform to get my foot in the door, because I did 20 years in the military and now I'm getting to my dream, right? So I've been on film sets and done my thing, and I shake hands is the best way to get in there. So I have a extensive, because I have a degree in film from SCAD, so Savannah College of Art and Design, the #2 film school in the world behind Cal Arts on the West Coast. Now, I have an extensive knowledge into the film and entertainment industry. So when you say it's not comparable, in a sense, yes, you're right, but it can be, right? Because when you're looking at streaming, the models are different, right? The spending isn't as much as you would think it'd be. Like, a AAA game and gaming could be somewhere between 100 to 250 million dollars. Well, so is movies. When you go into AA indies, the pricing is the same. Advertisement, all of that things, you want to usually double it. But the bottom line is, Netflix would be more akin to what Sony would be financially, while Disney would be what Sony would be more in the properties that Sony has that are more notable and, have a little bit more cachet. While Microsoft would be more akin to what Disney is financially, and Netflix would be more of where Microsoft would be with the properties. They have some good properties and they're still building their catalog as they go along. Microsoft can sustain that. That's why when he said it was sustainable, I'm like, yeah, he's not lying, because Microsoft can take the blunt at any time it's not profitable or it's not making any money. Just like how, you say it's not the same, but like if you look at streaming in general, it's been kind of a sinkhole of money. While there have been some profitable quarters, as you said, nobody has found out a way to make that salary, because I always look at it like streaming is salary based, while selling a game is hourly based. That's the way I try to break it down so people can get a better understanding. And it's not exact, of course, we know not exact, but the bottom line is Microsoft, like I said, to me had a plan, right? And I think they're moving into like they, got maybe like 5 or 6 more years before they say, okay, if it's still going this way, we need to figure something out or let it go. And I really just feel like Microsoft, Xbox really wants to get PlayStation, not Sony, but PlayStation up out of here, because I know people have this idea that Sony is PlayStation, and that if PlayStation goes away, Sony will die. And that's the furthest from the truth. PlayStation, while it may make up the biggest portion of their financials, it is not all of their financials. I don't even think PlayStation, if I'm not mistaken, and I can go find the working for it, it's never been more than 30% of their financials. But regardless of that factor, the point I'm trying to make is Microsoft can sustain this, and they can sustain it as long as they really want to. They can sustain this for 20 years if they want to, 30 years for they want to. And I think that was the goal. They knew coming into this that it wasn't going to be easy, and it's not something you can do overnight. So, and you can see in with streaming services, Disney is not profitable. Disney Plus is not profitable. You can go look at the Bob Iger call, and I'm invested in in Disney. So you look at Bob Iger was telling everybody, hey, he's looking to make Disney Plus profitable by the end of 2024. And Disney's been in the game for like, 3-4 years now? And you're looking into this, you're talking about going into your 4th or 5th year, and, they still haven't really retained a profitable quarter. And it's even weirder because Disney owns everything that's on their streaming service. They don't have to do the things that Netflix and other people do, where they have to, half their catalog is licenses and all the other things, fees that they would have to come up with. So I do understand. Like, I understand that Microsoft is in a position to play ball, and they're doing so. They're playing exactly what you said. Look, if we can't compete on quality in those things, then we'll just flood the market with lower costs, and we'll do it as long as necessary until we can move into the forefront. Because if they can if Game Pass becomes the it thing, right? Let's say they finally, start getting into the 200 or 300 million, and they force Sony into this game. Sony is going to be in a world of hurt. And I really feel like they can get not Sony, but PlayStation, they can get PlayStation up out of here, because I don't know how sustainable, how long Sony would be willing to pull the Netflix card, which is like having to borrow or pull from their other divisions to make PlayStation Plus work. I do think they're willing to give it a go, but I just don't know how long. So when I hear you saying everything, and I apologize because we're starting to get a little short on time. So I truly do get it. I am not a Microsoft or Xbox is dead person. And I understand you know your rule of actual a realistic source. I mean a real source. I can't remember. I'm starting to blank out a little bit, but a reliable source, excuse me, and then hopefully from the horse's mouth or at least another truthfully reliable source, and then you go with it, right? Because we already see in today's time there is no such thing as journalism or even news reporting. They just go with whatever they see on social media and they run with it. The Jeff Grubb thing got ran with because, well, Jeff Grubb said it. Now everybody's running around just going, ooh, ooh, ooh. But my issue or my point would be that it's still not. I think that while you say HiFi Rush and what Jeff Grubb says is again not indicative of the Xbox, I don't think that. For me, it's like, well, when I'm looking at these guys on Twitter and stuff, I get the reality is it's just not HiFi Rush. Is they're looking at Microsoft as a whole. Like while Xbox fans are segmenting it, they're going, okay, well this year and this year and this year, and they act like the other years don't exist. PlayStation fans are going, nah, Game Pass has been abysmal for years now. And I would agree with that because I'm not looking at it. When I'm looking at it, if you're looking at the business standard, well, I don't know what Microsoft financials are or whatever. I'm going, if you look at it, you've been in this game for almost 6 years, coming on 6 years in June 1st, right? You almost 6 years. And according to how the fanboys were, right? Even somebody like Dark who can be sensible, PlayStation Plus isn't a competitor. It wasn't before, and the revamp didn't help anything, right? Now, I understand that you will probably not have that same logic. I still think of it as a competitor. It may not be a good competitor, but it is a competitor, and the revamp has made it a little bit of a better competitor. But I get it, right? But I always just go with the logic, okay, if they're not a competitor and you've been standing in this ring pretty much by yourself, is how bots see it, and you got the lowest price. You got, at that time, probably like 1.5 billion PC gamers, and I can go get the statistics for that and send it to you if you like. You got, whatever Xbox base was at that time. I don't know. I don't have a thing for that. They weren't giving the numbers. And you're telling me that throughout this 6 years, you've only garnered somewhere, let's say, 25 million to 30 million. That's not great growth. One, that's like 5 million per year, average per year, roundabout. Because again, I'm just surmising. I don't have an exact number. We had that article where somebody said, oh, a source heard Jim Ryan in the meeting saying 29 million, and I think what is it, Derek Strickland had pulled some files from the court cases. He's been following it like crazy, where he had the graph that showed that Xbox was at 29 million. I don't know if it came from PlayStation or Xbox. So I'm going to just surmise it around 29 million. That's what PlayStation fans are looking at. And then they're just using each individual thing as a gotcha moment. And you really just can't take it serious. It's just console war BS. It's not really anybody on Twitter that's, not really console warring. You know what I mean? Like that you really can have a conversation with. Like me and you probably can talk all day and have a genuine conversation. But the bottom line is, everything that like this that comes out is going to be used for console warring, and you either laugh at it or you just ignore it because that's where it's going. But when PlayStation fans are looking at this, they're not just looking at HiFi Rush. They're looking at Redfall. They're looking at the fact that you showed all these games and you guys don't have any information on them. And while ponies will do that, and then while bots will try to counter with, well, you didn't see this and stuff, PlayStation has a more consistent output on the things of that they speak on. Yes, all companies do these same things, and I'm going all over the place, so I apologize because I'm just trying to get all my points out before I have to get off of here. When you hear these arguments, it's just coming from a place like when you hear somebody like Porter Rock, right? You got to realize he's been in the crumb side for a long time, and then he's been on channels like Broadband Bullies, which are more for entertainment. They're more console war based. We're going to drive up and we're going to get the crowd riled up and, entertain people in that way, right? So when you look at those people, Porter Rock on his channel can be serious, but his channel is still based off that, like, let's rile up the crowd and have fun and be silly and stuff. So you guys are trying to have an actual conversation with people that really don't care. Like at the end of the day, honestly, they don't. They just like, hey, when you're looking at Xbox as a whole, Game Pass has been failing. You know what I mean? Whether Xbox thinks it's failing or not, as a fan base, you can say it's failing because if you're only at like 30 million, 35 million in 6 years, when you have the ring by yourself, there's been an absorbent amount of advertisement for it. While people will say, oh, I ain't seen commercials. They advertise on Pringles, Doritos, Part Tarts. They even invested in GameStop. People don't know they gave up. What was it? They were willing to share their digital sales with GameStop. That had nothing to do with GameStop, just so that they can have an investment in GameStop, so that they can use the subsidized plan and give people Game Pass, as well as they've given Game Pass away. You know, not just a dollar deal, but if you were an Xbox fan, you know they had that. I think it was like games with gold, and then you get like Game Pass for a couple years for $1 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. It's a lot. And then you get the dollar deals, you get the subsidized deals, and all these things, and yet you're not moving the needle. As a fan, or as a console warrior, or a PlayStation fan, or however you want to say it, when they look at all that, and then they look at the output of first-party games, it's just a dunk. It is. It's just a dunk, as in joking, or even if they're serious. I don't listen to the people that are like out of their mind. You know what I mean? Like, you can't tell them anything PlayStation does is wrong, or the same vice versa for Xbox. I'm just talking about people that have some sense of sensibility when they're not playing around. So that's the bottom line. Like, when you're looking at HiFi Rush and you're looking at these models and all these things and business wise, and yeah, that's cool. But when you're talking about Twitter, people don't care about that. They're just looking at, like, as a person on the street, and I look at all these negative numbers, and I look at the fact that Game Pass isn't growing substantially at all. And they can look at Disney Plus and say, well, Disney Plus came in the game and tore it down. Even Paramount Plus been in the game 2 years, and they have 55 million. Whether they correlate or not, nobody cares. They're looking at that stuff and going, Xbox isn't looking too good. And I think that's where the disconnect for you and maybe people you are in a circle with comes from, especially on Twitter, is that you're like literally trying to have these real conversations with people that don't care and are just looking at it going, I mean, that's cool and all, but we're console warring out here. And that's it. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a console war thing. Like I said, when you go on to Twitter, you stated this before, it's so hard not to do because, like I said, I don't have friends that I can have this full conversation with. You feel me? So you're looking on Twitter going, well, you know, these people are, you know, like games and stuff, and you think you can, and for the most part, you're not going to. You might be able to find a few, Brap and Everborn and stuff, but most of the people are just there to just be as ignorant and have as much fun as they can, or just be as annoying and as miserable as they can. That's it.
Well, man, you're about the 99th person that's told me that I should just get off Twitter, and I have. Actually, this is like my third time back because, yeah, I mean, the course of conversation follows exactly that. You know, I write up all these business cases or do all these models or, you know, kind of write up these things on how software development works. And you're absolutely right. It hits 98.7% of Twitter. And people just blow past it because they want to get to the dunk. So this has been a great conversation, I would say, but I'm going to walk away from it sad because once again, I have to think about why the hell am I bothering with the things that I write on Twitter.
Well, can I give you a positive so that you don't walk away sad?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've met some people, right? You got the Everborns, right? You can have an actual conversation with. You've got Brap. I don't know if you know him personally, but you got Brap. And there are some people that you will find. So when you look at it, right, I'm a big person of faith, not religion, right? But I'm big on faith, right? If you look at it for that, the people that you get that you can have these conversations with makes it even more special. You know, being able to have these conversations with, let's say, 1,000 people who actually cared about the business or what you're trying to say, right? That would be cool and it would feel special, right? But not as special as like, you know, that connection with, you know, those people that you really enjoy having this conversation with. Now, I don't know what your goals are. Maybe your goals are like, hey, I'm trying to build like my own IGN type thing because these gaming sites are failing us, which, you know, we know they are. Then that's different, right? That's your business goals. But on the other side is you are finding people that you can have these true conversations with, even though you're on Twitter. It's just you're finding, a lot of needle in the haystacks, but you're finding them. So as much as it can be annoying, it's for me, it's about, like I try to tell people, it's about controlling yourself. Like if I get frustrated with something on Twitter and I read something, I don't respond to a lot of stuff. Like I'll see some things and I'll get agitated. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. That doesn't think, and I don't respond majority of the time. I'll just literally, I control myself and go, I could respond. Sometimes I even type a response, and then I just end up deleting it, going, it's a waste of my time. It's not going to go anywhere, right? But every so often I see somebody like you who I've heard. I get an idea where your head is. I've heard you on Brap. Like I said, I don't listen to Brap much. I'm like me. I want to be entertained, right? I want to hear. I don't like all the yelling over the top of each other, but I love the console war dunking. I find it hilarious, right? As long as it stays within the realm of just talking about video games and not somebody's family and stuff, right? So you guys' channel is cool for when I like want to hear like an actual conversation, but at the same time I'll be like, sometimes I wish, like I felt like the most entertaining I saw you on Brap was when Doc was on there. And it was so enjoyable for me for the first time in a long time, because I was like, man, he's like speaking how he truly feels, which I get that you do, but I don't feel like you do all the time in the way you want to say it. You were saying it a little unreframed, like, yo, get out of here, you guys. Like, this is not a game to be dunking on. It was a lot more energy with it, and it felt not professional and not corporate. It felt like you were just being who you would be if you were hanging out with your friends. When typically when I hear you speak, it's like very corporate, very professional, very as a matter of fact. And I'm like, that's cool, right? But sometimes people want to hear the real version of them, or like what they really think. You're a true Xbox fan, and I don't see anything wrong with that. And the way you stated the things you stated on the last show with Dark, I felt like you let loose, let your hair down a little bit. Like you were like, all right, I'm not trying to be a console warrior, but I'm not going to stand for this nonsense either. And it was fun to hear, you know what I'm saying? And Dark sizing you up and being like, yeah, Logic, yeah, this is Xbox show. I was out here laughing. I wasn't agreeing with nothing y'all was saying as a PlayStation fan, but I thought it was funny, and I was like, he's making logical sense. Like, if we're just being factual, okay. But as a PlayStation fan who thinks console war is funny, I'm like, hey, get out of here with that nonsense. So there's things you can smile about. You have found some good people. Dark is one of them. You know what I mean? If you actually have a conversation with Porter Rock, you'd find out he's one of them too. As much as he console wars, if you really want to have a real sit down. So there's people out there. So don't go away sad. I think you just have to manage yourself. You know what I mean? Especially with Twitter, or any social media, that you have to manage yourself. Otherwise, you're just in a losing battle.
No doubt. Hey, this has been a great conversation, but I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Anything else you wanna mention, Truth, before we get out of here?
Nope. I appreciate you. Keep doing what you do. Let your head down a little bit more on your shows, from time to time. Just a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Let these PlayStation fans know Xbox ain't one to be messed with. Sleeping giant.
All right, man. I appreciate it. We're gonna get out of here. When I wrap up, I'm gonna let some music play us out. Thanks a lot for anybody who swings through and watches or listens to the archive version of this over on the E2KG Network podcasting channel. Once again, my name has been GameLogic from the Rounding Off Infinity gaming channel on YouTube. Also one of the co-hosts of the Basement Radio Arcade podcast on the Brat Podcast channel on YouTube. Here with me tonight has been DaTruth777 from Twitter, and I appreciate him and everything that we talked about. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. Come here to talk about the games that you love. That's going to do it for us. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. We're out of here.